All right, folks, thanks for joining us again on a Family Through Service of V2VG podcast. Nailed it that time.
Yes.
Yep. And, so I just came back from a little vacation down in the People's Republic of Massachusetts, and you held the fort down.
I tried.
Yeah.
Nothing got burnt, so
This is true. That's a good thing.
So yeah, and here we are, right? I mean,
And it was successful.
it was, but I mean, we, as an organization, our executives, we work hard to make it continually successful, even if one is not available.
Right. And this was the first time, I think, that our treasurer wasn't on hand.
And that's true. And she runs our yard sales.
Yeah.
And
Typically, she's here for it.
Does all the micromanaging and all the delegation and all that. And
Yeah.
but it ran just as well as if she was here, because she did all the prep work for at least a week prior, contacting everybody. She made sure everybody knew what they were doing in advance. And then Friday, before you guys left, she confirmed everything with everybody. And so that way Saturday was, it went off without a hitch. I mean, it was good stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we were. She likes to make sure everything goes off well. So she was very nervous that things were functioning the way that that they should, and things were going smooth, because it was, it's our final one for the year, and it was a big one. There was a lot of things.
Oh my
here.
goodness, yeah. And
we saw the pictures, and you guys moved the stuff.
Yeah, they. I tell you, Amy, is our secretary on our board.
Yeah.
She was in constant communication with Jen, and then we had two other board members that were constantly texting Jen to keep her up to date on stuff. So,
Yeah.
so I think that made Jen feel a little more comfortable as well.
She did. She likes to be in the loop of things, and she doesn't want to be left out, and none of us do, because we all treat this organization as our baby, and at least the founding members do.
Well, yeah, and she knows all of our individual flaws, as it were. She knows that I don't always have the best filter, and at times I can just be an asshole, and I can project that, even though it has nothing to do with what's going on. She knows Sarah has high anxiety, and so she took all these precautions to make sure everybody knew exactly what they were doing, and it was absolutely a success. It was a lot of fun, but she was missed, even though things ran smoothly.
Yeah, it's cool though, and she appreciates being missed. And we have a lot of regulars coming.
Oh,
in.
absolutely.
And some of the regulars were texting Jen or messaging her. She's like, nope, ask them, they're there.
Yep.
and stuff. So it was cool, but it was also a lesson for our organization to see how we function when the executives delegate things to board members and to volunteers, how things work out. And we have to, as an organization, you have to praise your members, and you have to criticize your members, depending on the situation.
No, and I agree. And, we were talking about this because we just had our officially first block party, as it were,
yeah.
Which it was just our board members,
Yep.
with the exception of we had one set of guests, because we have a board member who's in the process of moving.
Yeah.
So we wanted to do something special for him. But afterward, we were talking about it, like, during our event, our cookout, I tried to give words of praise to each one of our board members.
Yep.
And you and I ended up talking about it later. Like, we should really talk about the importance of that on podcast video. And I think you're right, because it's easy to see the flaws or the negatives in people as things are happening.
Yeah.
But I think for us, for what we try and do, because we try and find individual praises, and we try and do it personally and publicly.
Yeah. Well, the world, I think, or society,
Yeah.
I would say, is used to negative criticism. Matter of fact, when you hear criticism, it's negative connotations. It's
Absolutely, yeah.
Criticize me, and it's negative, and it's what can you do better? And usually criticism comes in a very negative tone. It's more of an insult than a it's even a phrase, constructive criticism. Like, you actually have to spell it out. Criticize me, but in a constructive way. Where I think technically criticism should be at least neutral, but not necessarily as a default, scathing. Criticism, I think the etymology is like, to cut, but I'm not sure. But anyway, I think criticism is good because the goal of authentic criticism is to make somebody aware of their faults in a professional way, so that way they can make themselves better.
Yeah.
But praising somebody for what they've done good is far more rare of an occurrence, but I think it's just as important as criticism.
I completely agree. And one of the things we do, you and I specifically, and we typically do with Jen, but this time we included her in the public praising, is that normally the three of us get together and we do a very private praising, and because we don't want, it's important as leaders to not be patting ourselves on the back in front of our staff or our volunteers, because that's poor leadership.
Yeah, you don't. It's the military is great at doing that, and
yes,
and everybody, you do get resentful of attaboy awards from leaders to leaders. It's like, what, you're just giving yourselves an award now.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when a random president gives another president a very high honor. It's like, what is like Skippy Doo, Anyway, well, client's calling. Okay, we had to take a short break. We had a client call. We never stopped working.
I tell you, and a great job pausing everything as I'm answering the phone, because, I know it makes your job harder when we're trying to cut and paste things.
It's like, oh shit.
But
that's okay. My wife came in and brought me a coffee, so we would have had to stop anyway.
Yeah,
I would just let her walk through, whatever.
Well, but she's short enough. She may have been.
She could have just ducked through and wouldn't have seen. Either way. But I forgot exactly. Basically what we're talking about is we don't want to praise ourselves in front of people, because it's kind of funny when leaders praise leaders publicly. It's like, yay, great job, but whatever. But it is important, I feel, and I know you feel, for people to hear that everybody, right, to hear they've done a good job, because in the society we live, there's so much negative out there, right? And how often do you hear, hey, you know what? You did a good job, and not you did a good job, but you could do a better job.
Yeah.
Just, hey, you did a good job. Thank you. You really helped me out. And just fucking leave it. Leave the criticism for another day.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it shows leadership too. The more specific that you can say that the person did, it shows attentiveness and attention to that individual. So it's not just saying, "Hey, good job." Now they know that you're actually paying attention to what they're doing.
No, that's a good point. Not just good job, but good job at running this part of the program, or good job at taking care of this part of the yard sale, or setting up, or breaking down, or whatever.
Yeah,
because I agree with you. That's actually a great point, because you could say good job to somebody, and that's good. That's fantastic. But like you said, I do agree with you that if you are specific with them, it means a little bit more.
And if honestly, what I try and do when we're doing our things is also even express where things would be without the individual.
Yeah, that works too.
Like, hey, if you hadn't worked with this client driving all those miles, he wouldn't have gotten what he needed.
Yeah. Or it'd be a lot more, like, I couldn't have done it without you. And things like that.
Yeah. So I think, and saying it in a meaningful, sincere way is really important.
Well, I think that's true, and I think that you have to be humble enough to be sincere.
Yes. Oh, indeed.
Because it's one thing to thank somebody for what they've done, but it's another thing to be thankful.
Yeah.
What they've done, and that means you got to cut back your arrogance, cut back your pride, cut back your ego, right? And say that, and don't think, well, I could have done it better. Take those thoughts and shove them away. It's not about what you could have done better or what you would have done different. Just be thankful that somebody did something and you didn't have to take care of it, because ostensibly you have enough on your plate.
Yeah, and especially as leaders, if you're a good leader, you should have a lot on your plate, because
ideally,
and it's important too to be aware of even if it's a small thing, but if it's outside of that individual's comfort zone due to anxiety or another disability, to acknowledge that, because even if it's something you could have done better,
Sure.
but if it's the fact that, for example, Sarah's like, I went out of my comfort zone and I talked to a couple volunteers and I got their phone numbers and stuff, something like that may seem kind of minute to a lot of people.
Sure.
But to her, it was a huge thing, and it's important for us.
It's a big step forward too.
Yeah, and we have to acknowledge that. Like, we know it's not your comfort zone, but it's outstanding that you did that, because you reaching out to them, now that takes pressure off of Jen from doing it,
And another aspect of that is, as leaders or even as a committee head, right, you should know the people that you're directing.
Well, yes, right.
Ideally, right? As best that you can, you should know the people that you have working with you or for you, because then you can identify and recognize those things.
And
you shouldn't just randomly choose people, because then you don't know if there's personality clashes.
And this weekend was a prime example. I mean, Jen knew who to go to. She had one board member in mind who she wanted to kind of oversee the whole thing. Right. She had one volunteer in mind who she wanted to kind of run the volunteer aspect of things. And she knew that they would both be good for that situation.
Right.
Because if you take somebody who is not comfortable around a lot of people and you're like, oh, I want you to run this huge event.
Well, guess what?
They might end up being in, in the Porta John the whole time.
And then the event crumbles.
A mess. Yeah. So you're right. Making sure you know who you have with you and who is good at what.
I think a leader, and this podcast is kind of going into leadership, right? Not just praising.
Yes, I guess so.
And I think it's good, because a good leader praises their people and knows their people. And I've dealt with a lot of leaders in the Army who didn't do either of those things.
Well, you had that one time where you had to write a citation for...
Shit.
Which was your citation.
My citation.
What did he say? Something like supervision supersedes work?
Supervision supersedes work or effort or something like that. And I wrote...
So there you go.
I wrote everything that I did, and then he changed my name to his, and he got a Bronze Star.
So, and that's
And if you're watching, which you're probably not, you know who you are.
Right? And that's not good leadership.
And anybody of my buddies who are watching know exactly who the fuck I'm talking about.
Right.
Scuba Steve, if you're watching, Doc, you know who I'm talking about.
So, I mean, but that's an example of bad leadership. Do you have somebody in mind that is a good example of good leadership that you dealt with in the Army, maybe?
Yeah, Sergeant Stone. Sergeant First Class Stone is a great leader. And let me backtrack real quick. The sergeant who I wrote the citation for and got the Bronze Star, I don't know if he was a good leader, but he was an effective leader. And if you think effectiveness corresponds with good, then he was good. He was good in the sense that he got shit done because he knew the capabilities of his soldiers, but he was very much a taskmaster. Now, a good overall leader is Sergeant Stone. And he was a Sergeant First Class. He was in E7. This gentleman, he just, to me, he embodied what an NCO is.
Yeah.
And then when I got injured, so we went on a bunch of road marches, and we were doing road marches after road marches after road marches, and I ended up stress fracturing in 3 places up my main metatarsal bone in my left foot. And they went to do a bone scan on me at, I think it was Ireland Community Hospital on Fort Knox, Kentucky. And on the way back, the van I was driving in, it was a military van. The driver had never driven in snow before, crashed, and I slammed into, we crashed, and I couldn't get back to Fort Campbell. I couldn't get home. So instead of leaving me in the hospital overnight, he took me to his house because it was closer to where he lived, and I slept on his couch. Now, that's a good leader. He took me to his home. He could have been like, well, I'll see you in the morning. I'll pick you up. He drove out and he picked me up. He brought me to his home, and so I kind of convalesced there for 24 hours. And then when I had my brain surgery, he really stepped up. He organized a lot of things. He even out-processed my gear for me, because when you out-process the military, you get your TA-50, you got to go through CIF, and that's a pain in the ass.
I'll tell you what, man.
That's a bitch, huh?
The fact that you didn't end up missing some stuff really shows his leadership skills.
Well, I was missing some stuff, but he figured it out.
Well, that,
what you're saying, right?
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, his stuff that he was missing could have been found, and then you would have been missing that stuff.
Yeah,
so that really shows.
But he also, when I was in the hospital, St. Thomas Hospital in Nashville, after my brain surgery, he drove my wife down back and forth with the kids, Patrick and Matthew at the time. They were the only two that I had at the time. And he drove my family back and forth. He got the unit I was with to pool some money together for a couple of gas cards, and he really stepped up. And he's just a phenomenal NCO. A phenomenal NCO.
And
I can't. He gave me a little a knife, like an Arab kind of knife, when it says Corporal McNail on it and all this stuff, and it's like a going away gift. And it's he was like, I forget how he said it. He goes, I wanted to get a knife as black as me, but I had to get one light brown, so I guess it'll work. It'll work in your favor. And I was like, shuck, because we always gave each other shit. He was a black NCO, and I was the only white guy in my entire section that I was with there in the artillery, and he always gave me shit about being the token white guy.
Right.
So he was he just a wonderful NCO. What about you?
I'll tell you, it's great because your situation is more on the extreme end. But as far as goods NCO, staff NCO, I also had a E7, a gunnery sergeant. And so when we would go out to work on helicopters, he would go with us. Not only would he go with us, but he would carry the toolbox, which is seriously an E1, E2 situation. That you're the tool bitch. It's just like working with your dad when you're a kid, right?
Hold the flashlight.
But he would go out there, carry the the toolbox, and then actually help work on, get his hands dirty. And those little things and the huge thing that you went through with yours are what make the difference, right? And then I had a sergeant who I won't name his name. He looked like a Puerto Rican Michelin man. It was kind of funny. But he was always a delegator. Like, or things would come down from the staff NCO level, and he'd be like, all right, go fix that. And then he'd just write it up. He never actually went out to inspect it. He never checked on anything. And then if something went wrong when it was inspected, he would just blame whoever was working on it, opposed to...
But he never actually inspected it.
Exactly. And he never acknowledged that, hey, I should have been out there, or, hey, it's my fault that, let me deal with it.
So he passed the buck in all regards, but except not for accolades, though, huh? If something went right, it was him.
Oh, yeah. But, again, you have to look at the things in two scales, too, because those little things, like that big thing, made huge dividends for you. It's something that you'll always remember. But those little things too, the average worker, volunteer, whatever employee, they're going to remember those things. If you're a manager at Walmart and you pick up a broom and start sweeping, so that way
it sticks with you.
Those things, they really make a huge difference on people.
So the first NCO that I was talking about was the NCO I see before Sergeant Stone got there, and he was very effective, and he drove us to our limits, and I really like him because he brought out the best in me, and he expected the best and then more, right?
Yeah.
Sergeant Stone, and so but he would tell you, this is what you're going to get done, and this is how you're going to do it, and he would inspect everything to the minute detail. Everything he would inspect, and it had to be perfect, or it wasn't good enough. Sergeant Stone would say, I expect you to make this perfect, and if it comes back, then I'm going to if you make me look bad, then I'm going to hammer on you. So they were two sides of one coin.
But again, that one situation where you typed up that award, even though he was a good NCO, but that one situation is gonna.
That was telling.
The gunny that I was talking about, he had a saying. He said, "You could be the best architect in the world. You can build 10,000 bridges, but one time you get caught sucking a dick, you'll always be known as a cocksucker." Like
and that's the negative thing in the world, right?
It is. It's like all the good things. If you make that really bad decision, or you make a decision to do something that's not right, you will be remembered for it.
Yeah.
And here we are talking 10 years later,
and I'm still I still shake my head about it. All the great things that he did, for me personally and professionally, mostly professionally. Matter of fact, all professionally.
Okay. See,
that one thing, I'm still resentful for it, because I'm like,
it's those things, man. But also, I think a big part of leadership, and one of the things we were talking about. But
it did teach me perfection in your work ethic.
Well, and that's good, right? I mean, that helps you thrive. So in some instances, he was a good NCO, but that one thing.
But like you said, you fuck up one way, and that's how you'll be remembered. And that's telling about the world, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And but one of the things we were talking about as leaders, as the founders of the organization and the executives, one of the things we've been kind of rattling around with, because in January, our semi, we wanted to do a constructive criticism. As you said, we have to, and we're talking about it, and we're like, well, we can't criticize each other, because one is just, it's not right. Like,
it's not fitting.
Yeah. So one of the things we came up with is that us three executives would get together and do a sheet on each one of the other board members. But we also wanted the board members to do a sheet on us individually as leaders.
Yep.
And so this it's a way to praise and show trust in your troops or your staff or your volunteers, that they're going to be able to criticize you without being personal and those things as well. And that goes a long way.
Yeah, because there's no repercussions. Just what do I do that you don't think is effective, or that you don't like, or whatever, and what do you think I can do better? It's not enough to point a finger. Solutions, not excuses.
Yes, and
I've said that to my kids forever. Solutions, not excuses. Tell me what you think I'm doing wrong, or that you think I could do better, and then tell me how you think I could do. How can I do better?
Is that still blinking?
Yeah, it's blinking.
Okay, because something came up on the screen and I didn't know what it was.
We're
Sorry for the interruption.
Yeah, so it's not just what you think I can do better, but how do you think I can do better? Because I don't want someone to lambaste me and be like, Eric, you should do this better, you should do that better, you should do this better. And I say, okay, I respect that, but how? And they say, well, I don't know. I'm like, well, then what the okay,
Hey, well, how about for shits and giggles, you give me one critique and I give you one critique.
Right now?
Right here, right now.
Okay. Let's see.
In front of the whole world, no pressure.
Critique.
What could I do better? Sexual favors is not an answer.
What can you do better? Okay. Try harder to be less emotionally involved in the clients' situations.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's definitely true.
They pull your heartstrings easily.
I want to
believe
everybody is.
I mean, that's good. We talked about that yesterday, right?
But it's just like I want to believe everybody has some goodness in them, and it's not always the case.
Yeah.
My criticism to you is, I would say, to be more harsh on your delegating for me to do things to help you. Because
that's fair.
And I know you're the wordsmith and you do all the computer stuff and I do the phone stuff, but I think there are some things that we need to kind of come to an arrowhead on, kind of combine. And
I agree.
So that would be my one criticism.
You dropped that bomb on me real quick. I was like, fuck, I don't know.
I know. Well, that's
and that, and it's
sometimes
good.
that's the way it is, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, but and those are fair criticisms. I think that's fair. And the thing is, we each have our lane of doing stuff, but our lane should overlap more. I think that's fair.
Yeah, and especially when we have some gaps right now between people wanting to be in executive positions. We don't really have anybody that's willing to step up to that place right now.
One day, hopefully.
And you guys go on vacation, or you're sick, or there's something going on that, like, I should be able to do some of what you do. Granted, I can write some emails.
Yeah.
But there are some things. For instance, you did the grant thing today. Something like that would have been a good thing for us to kind of do together. So that way I can, But
That's
again,
fair.
it's this is. I mean, we do this all the time anyway, in just different ways, right? We don't put each other on the spot so much, but I think it's important for our viewers and our board members and volunteers who see this, see that, it's just as difficult for us to come up with criticism for each other too. Sometimes you're on the spot.
We work so close with each other. We kind of criticize each other on the spot.
And we just keep rolling back and forth, right? We just try and get things done.
But I would say that for anybody watching, if you're in a business situation, and somebody criticizes you and you don't ask for it, try to maintain your calm and your composure, because there are some people out there who will criticize you every step of the way.
Yes.
And I don't think that the best thing to do is to criticize them back. I think the best way to handle it is to just say, okay, thank you for your critique, and if they're in a position of authority, thank you. I will take steps to make it better. I'll work on it and stuff like that. And if they're a peer of yours, just smile and nod and say thank you. I don't think you should do criticism for criticism, because that becomes less of criticism and more of an insult. If
it's an attack.
Criticism on the fly.
And you and I do this, especially since we've had the office completed.
Yeah.
This is our workspace and stuff, and we try and keep things very professional in here. But if something like that happens, somebody critiques us or accuses us of something that is inaccurate,
and we
don't deal with that here. We call your living room our bitch fest.
Yeah.
So we go in the living room and we talk about it, and we kind of get it off our chest. But you don't want to present yourself as being so defensive.
But then somebody calls me, you're like, V2VG.
Yeah. And throw the phone against the wall and
what? Yeah, I think that's fair. Just all in all, be calm, be courteous, and that absolutely includes your peers, the people who work with you. If you have people that you are in a leadership position of, whether it's an official leadership position or like a de facto leadership position like us, we're executives of the organization. We're not the bosses of the board per se, but it's a very weird situation.
Yes.
So we're like de facto leadership, but not leadership. We don't tell them what to do in the sense of a boss telling them what to do.
Yeah.
But our roles, our positions are leadership positions, but we are not. You know what I'm saying?
I think we have more freedom to ask our board members what they feel comfortable doing.
Sure.
Where if you're a boss, they have to do what you say.
They have to do what you say.
There's a job that needs to be done.
Yeah, well, our board can say no, thank you.
Yeah,
and stuff like that.
Whatnot.
There's other things. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, and so I do want to say, for all the people viewing us, please go down to the bottom and subscribe. We're trying to get to 100 subscriptions or more so we can start doing sponsors to help with our overhead.
Yeah.
And also, we have that it's going to be a very off-the-cuff type of situation during our family event.
Yep.
We're going to be doing a Q&A or testimonial.
September 12th, I believe.
Yes. So we have no idea what people are going to say or anything, and in between we'll be talking about the events and stuff going on.
Yep.
But it will be live, but we're not going to broadcast it live.
Right.
So we're
going to
no
record
idea.
it and then we'll post it. And it'll be fun. It'll be fun to do.
So subscribe and look for us for the September 12th event. It's going to be a lot of fun.